As part of our celebration of 5 years of the United Methodist Creation Justice Movement, my part is to share a little bit about General Conference 2024 in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I had the privilege to go. Served as press for the United Methodist Creation Justice Movement and Caretakers of God's Creation and Fossil Free UMC. And so I got to stay the entire time and keep track of the legislation, celebrate the legislation, and do some follow-up stories. So check those out. Those are on the United Methodist Creation Justice Movement webpage. And today I just want to tell you a story kind of about, we'll move quickly. There was a lot that happened through the good news of what we were able to accomplish, what more we did together as the movement at General Conference. Like other folks here, I'm also going to share a little bit about my story of self. Let me start with this guy. So this is a leopard frog near a conservation section of the Ottawa River in Canada called the Britannia Conservation Area, a small saved patch of earth from what was once a wilderness behind our home when I was a little girl. It still fills my heart, a maple forest with ponds and the Ottawa River, and there was so much wildlife, frogs and caterpillars and snakes and beavers and rabbits and foxes and deer and birds, and it was an amazing place to just run and be wild. And the years I spent pocketing snakes and frogs and hiding turtles in my room brought me to a deep sense of how unbelievably, perhaps unbearably precious God's creation is, this earth. And it helped me understand deeply also that I am part of the forest. So as a grown up, I learned about pollution and climate change, and in learning the truth of where we really are, where we were headed, and what we were already seeing, it just cut deep. So information such as what it is in charts, next slide. Yeah, so in charts like this, these are charts I use to try to communicate with other folks, as you can see that. So this type of information, this one shows my beloved Oregon and the rising temperatures we can expect. And I like to mark the Dust Bowl because, that's actually not the direction we should be heading. Um, that's this is my way of trying to communicate that we cannot stand next to this kind of sin and say nothing. So God calls me to this work. Next slide. So here I am. My other part here is to celebrate the work of the movement as it culminated in the tremendous outcome of General Conference in Charlotte, North Carolina last year. The movement was formed in part to address the gap between what United Methodists claimed to believe and what they actually did, and Kathy talked about that. Turning words into action, which Kim also talked about, and Eric. So the next few slides are going to go by fast, so be ready. Next one. General Conference Vigil kicked off with an Earth Day. This was our first thing of the conference. There's Pat Watkins in the center, texting like a teenager. It was helped to be organized by United Women in Faith, and Dan Jurenko at the bottom leads the candlelight prayer. Next slide. Our legislation was very well received. Here's what passed in no particular order. We passed a mandate for a caretaker of God's creation in every annual conference. The legislation submitted by J.D. Hanson. Stay on that. And go to the next slide. Kim Richmond wrote and submitted legislation on church land use, encouraging native plants and faithful land stewardship. Next slide. Chris Zinkowitz submitted legislation to form green teams at every level, including adding the ministry by name into the Book of Resolutions and Book of Discipline. She is one of the first trained global ministry earth keepers, and many members of the movement being earth keepers. We also celebrated at the Earth Keeper dinner at General Conference dinner and gathering. Next slide. Reverend Nancy Blade submitted legislation calling for sustainable practices when United Methodists are conferencing together, such as at annual conference. Next slide. Bob Downs has been champion to the road to net zero, and his legislation resulted in a commitment by the body to work to achieve the net zero goal. Next slide. Pastor Ian Uriola, a young adult delegate, submitted 3 resolutions, all to address mobilizing to get clean energy into our churches and address carbon pollution. Next slide. A happy surprise came from German Central Conference, where Bishop Harold Ruckert submitted a petition to reduce plastic use, which also passed. Next slide. Then there was all the work that came alongside the efforts of the movement that included movement members, oftentimes including Reverend Mark Davies, who is a leader and contributor to the new section of the social principles that speaks to our faith called the Community of All Creation, and other legislation also. The movement cheered on those doing the work, including the General Board of Church and Society, United Methodist Women, Methodist Federation for Social Action, and General Commission on Religion, Race, and others. Next slide. Fossil Free UMC is also part of the movement, and shout out to convener Reverend Sharon Delgado. Fossil Free had a single focus with legislation to screen out fossil fuels from the denomination's investment portfolios. Next slide. The divestment effort started in 2016 at the General Conference, but it lapsed during the pandemic, but we picked up strong for 2024. Over 700 individuals, local churches, green teams, and organizations signed the petition asking Westpath to divest. Next slide. Methodists joined with Green Faith and others for a march and day of witness, calling out Bank of America and other big banks for financing pipelines and other fossil fuel projects during General Conference. And that was a fun day. Next slide. And we all did some long time in committees for all the legislation. These photos are the Fossil Free UMC group, but many of us packed into the observer sections for how many days? 4, 5. At the Fossil Free group, we were packed in, and there were 4 or 5 Westpath executives and with the members of council on administration and finance. And you get to know each other a lot better when you're like 6 inches from each other for 5 days. And we almost prevailed at Fossil Free UMC. We missed it by like 2 or 3 votes. But the really good things that came out of this were included things like that Westpath be intentional with its divestment concerns, that the social value funds be truly fossil free, and divested funds will now be included as a life stage option that's being rolled out. United Methodist foundations are also responding to divested funds. They're making those available for local churches and conferences. A number of conferences have already, a few conferences have already voted to divest their monies, and that's only going to grow. And there are continuing divestment specific summits, task forces, legislation moving in and getting started. Next slide. So happy anniversary to the United Methodist Creation Justice Movement. Y'all get 5 stars. And that is my presentation. So stop share. So, wow. There was so much that happened. It was like you would just want to throw up a big shout and just the joy of it. We missed Fossil Free UMC by this much, and so much came of it all the same. There's so much to celebrate. It matters that you show up. It matters that we showed up. All of you showed up, and we can continue to show up and do this work. And I couldn't be more grateful than to be part of such an amazing organization.